Welcome to The Real Build.
You leave this world behind, so live a life you will remember.
Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Bill Reiman, your broker builder. And today I got another amazing guest, a friend of mine. We met, I don't know, what a couple of years ago now. And it's great catching up with this guy again here. And we're finally having him on the show. He is a visionary founder of Stonewood Waters Craftsmen, a premier landscape design firm based in New York. Since 1992, his company has been renowned in creating unique and distinctive designs for luxury residential properties throughout the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes region. His leadership philosophy centers on the belief that the true measure of successful organization is driven by the people involved, reflecting his dedication to both his team and his clients. Faith and family are the cornerstone of his life and work. Beyond work, he is passionate about mentoring fellow entrepreneurs, helping them lead with vision and build businesses that truly matter. Kyle Stevens, welcome to The Real Build. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm
That
glad.
sounded really good. I was kind of impressed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I do a lot of research before these shows, and I pull from all these different places, and it's fun. So it's a lot of research on you and what your background is, but I don't want to say too much more. I want you to talk about it a little bit. So who is Kyle Stevens?
Okay. Oh boy. Probably should have preempted me on that one. Well, I think that you pretty much summarized it up. I mean, I've been a serial entrepreneur since I was a kid. I started I started, and this may be offensive to some people, but I started with a trap line and coonhounds when I was a kid and put myself through college. And next thing I was buying rental property and, dabbled in, interior remodeling and had, just my hands in all these different things. And at at one point, I got to the point where I had so much busy. I was also a tool maker. I was a journeyman tool maker. And so I'm working in a machine shop and going to night school, bought all these rental properties, had all these little side hustles, snow plowing here in Rochester. And I said, geez, I need to buy a commercial mower because I can't keep up with all the grass cutting, in the summer. And that's truly how my business started. I bought a commercial walk behind mower and in the early 90s, and I thought, geez, maybe I should mow a few extra lawns just to, kind of pay myself back for the investment in the mower. And in a month I had like 30 properties, and now I was even busier, so I hired my brother to be my first employee. And it scaled quickly, and I worked a full-time job for the first probably I think it was about 8 or 9 years before I, had the opportunity to take a buyout and left the machine tool industry and went full on into landscaping. And at that time, giving you a little company history rather than who I am, but at that time we were getting so many opportunities in outdoor living, patios, outdoor living spaces, pool environments, that I needed to rebrand the company. And it was right around that time that I really discovered who I was. And, at that point in my life as a young entrepreneur, I realized that I was living my life out of expectation and not appreciation.
Mm.
And that, though I grew up in a very firmly rooted Christian family, my mother's a minister, a gospel singer, author, crazy talented woman. And I really had no time in my life for my personal faith, my walk as a Christian. And I realized that I was putting my priorities were all out of whack. I was work first, work second, family absolutely last, and no time for my relationship with God. And, one day I was, what happened was, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. But at that time of my life, I was very short-fused, miserable all the time, couldn't find joy in anything I was doing. And I was driving down this road and and I was stressed about something, and I'm in my 1-ton pickup truck, and I'm, just kind of complaining to myself. And I all of a sudden I noticed that my knuckles were bumping the dashboard. And I'm like, what the heck? And I was so angry inside and stressed out that I was pushing on the steering wheel and I bent my steering wheel.
Jeez. Wow.
So I pulled off to the side of the road and I sat there and I said, what what is wrong with me? What's going on? Well, I'm not this person. Why is everything so hard right now? I was married at the time, and uh, my former wife and I were totally disconnected. It was just a horrible time in my life, and as I'm sitting on the side of the road, God spoke to me and He said, "Well, the only thing that's different is you're living a life void of me."
Mm.
And I sat there and just it broke me, and I wept, and here I am sitting there like I'm the guy that, I'm never a crier, right? And like death, anything like that, it doesn't move me. But he split me in half, and he just exposed my vulnerability. And um, I went back to my office and I said, okay, we're stopping everything. That time, I think we had like 35 or 40 employees, maybe, moderate sized company. And I said, our priorities are all out of whack. I said, so from this day forward, we're going to rebrand the company and we're going to put God first, our family second, and work absolutely last. Now, for most entrepreneurs hearing this, they're like, oh, that's a bunch of crap because how do you possibly do that? And the reality is it takes intentional focus and action. And so I said, well, what can we do? Well, first off, we have to change the name of our company. And through the help of some of my team and talking about what our standards are going to be and what do we believe in, we came up with Stonewood and Waters. And the reason why we have these basically three elements involved in our name is that, well, every balanced landscape has three factors: stone, wood, and water. And then spiritually, as a company, as a person, as a leader, I can't live without the rock, which is first, which is Jesus Christ in my life. I am like the tree or the wood, right, that can't live without the living word, which is the water. And so in 19, it was, gosh, now I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 2004, roughly. We rebranded everything. And honestly, Bill, from that day forward, our business just scaled and we found favor and opportunity in ways that we never had before. And I'm not saying that we do anything uniquely different. My background is mechanical engineering. I'm just a guy who can build things. I can see it. You give me a pile of nuts and bolts, I can build you something out of it. And no formal training in landscape design or architecture or anything like that. But I just have that natural aptitude. I get it from my mother, actually. My father couldn't drive a nail straight if his life depended on it. But we, next thing you know, I have these clients that are just pouring into us and giving us opportunity to be creative. Where, as a contractor yourself, you talk to these families and they're looking for solutions, and everyone's quick to try to sell them something, right? And they're trying to sell them their goods or why do you hire this company? But very often you're not, given the opportunity. It takes a lot to get their trust, their true trust. And so we've had a series of clients that are, um, to this day, they will always be some of my most cherished relationships because they allowed me the freedom to explore my creativity, and they paid me to do that. And the outpouring of that when you're not confined to lines or boxes or shapes or budgets, the opportunity to be creative. You're coloring outside the lines and you're doing things that are truly remarkable. And it really, it's made me who I am. And so fast forward, um, you know, every day, this morning, as a person, I have two kids. I actually am remarried. So I have four kids altogether, two of my wife's and two of my own. And they're all grown now and starting their lives. And every day I start my day, first of all, picking five things that I'm grateful for because I deserve nothing. And we can talk about that, if you'd like, but um, gratitude is a huge thing and in my life. And then I look for ways to live a righteous life and am I in congruency with myself?
Mm.
Because I think oftentimes, we find ourselves in these positions, especially now with social media and all the things that are distractions in our world, that we proclaim a certain standard and we declare that, oh, this is who we are, but really we're incongruent because we're all broken inside. We're living the rags of sin or guilt in our lives, and we're not really trying to live a righteous life. And um, so that's kind of where I start my day, right? And then I go through my day and look to ways where I can be a blessing to other people. And now my business has changed a lot, and one of the challenges that we ran into with Stonewood Waters was I went through a divorce, and the divorce was mm, not wonderful. So it put me in a position to where it truly was I'm not saying that the divorce was an answer to prayer by any means, but the byproduct of the divorce was really an answer to prayer because I had built this company with all these people and we were struggling. We were really struggling because was wearing too many hats, and the divorce really put us in a tough spot. And I was looking for a way to transform the business to where we could design and manage and not carry the burden of all the staff and all of the weight and the worry about having to keep people busy all the time. So that would allow me the freedom to invest in my family, invest and pour into other people, other contractors, and really truly try to remain congruent with my walk. And so that's when we developed KDS Design Studios, which is a sister company of Stonewood Waters. And with KDS Design Studios, we design for companies all around the country. We get to work with incredible people and of all different scale, and and design some truly fun projects. And so we'll come alongside and partner with them, act as a salesperson at times for them, um, help them build a product that they're really proud of. And oftentimes it's helping level them up a little bit because everyone seems to be striving to do that next big project or that little bit the next level, right? And that opens up the door for mentorship. And so now today, I really feel as if I'm finally, after all these years, really kind of landed in that position to where, um, I have a true partner in my wife, and we're living a congruent life together. And it's giving me the opportunity to work with other people around the world and around the country, rather, not around the world, but and really do some fun stuff, you know. Now we have also in Rochester, at least we're in Rochester, New York, there's obviously in all development in backyard environments, in-ground pools is it's a really big must have for a lot of families. Well, in our region, we have great pool companies. They build great pools, but that's all they do is they put in a pool. They don't do any design work. They don't do anything to create the vision for the consumer. So it's really a broken sales process. So the customers, they buy this big pool and they're so excited. And then they realize that the pool companies consumed their entire budget and there's nothing left to get rid of the pile of dirt, let alone put up a fence, let alone hook up the electric, let alone all of the things that go along with that, right? So, which can be extremely frustrating for somebody like myself who really relies on them to be accountable to their time and what they're doing. So, after 33 years of waiting and hoping they're going to communicate and hoping they're setting realistic expectations with the customer and hoping I can get ahead of them. I said, the heck with this, we're done. So we opened a pool and spa company. And so now we have Lux Pool and Spa, which is kind of a unique product because we don't compete with the other pool companies. If somebody wants a pool that's we could offer, so we focus on smaller cocktail pools, plunge pools, um, things of that nature. So there's smaller fiberglass pools. We're playing around with some concrete pools right now, and or like a spool, is if you've ever heard of that. But the goal is we stay in the smaller footprint because we have a 100% subcontracting model. So we want to work with the hardscapers that are going to finish the project and sell turnkey jobs. Well,
Mhm.
these guys they're already equipped with all the equipment they need for a hardscape project, which is, capable of facilitating the installation of a smaller fiberglass pool. So now I'm able to align these contractors up with a turnkey pool project. We come in, help them with the pool installation, and our guys hook up all the pool and all that stuff. Um, but these guys then control the timeline of their schedule. They're not having to wait for somebody to come in and, you know, finish what they are supposed to, do before they can start. So now we really kind of control that whole process. And the best part, Bill, is my partner is my son,
Mhm.
who is 19, and his name is William, and we call
Great
him Big
name.
Will.
Great
Yep,
name.
yep, yep. Well, he's a Will. He's not a Bill,
My
right?
son's a Will too, so.
Ah, yeah. So we call him Big Will, and you know, I think the greatest gift ever. Who knows if it'll stick with him, if he'll continue on in this journey. I'm hoping he will, but if he doesn't, that's fine. But what it's given me the opportunity to do is spend every day working with my son. And for a lot of fathers, it's that time management, that work life balance, that blending of your work life and home life, and trying to integrate those two together is very difficult. And so this opportunity is is truly incredible. I mean, sometimes I sit there and I think, oh my Lord, how is it possible that you grew up in such close proximity to me and you didn't learn any of this stuff, not even through osmosis. You don't even, you know, like, if you're cutting lumber, right, it's either right or it's not. If you're cutting something to length, it's either right or it's close enough. No, 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 no. I'm a perfectionist. And
Mhm.
so he's starting to slowly grasp onto some of these things. So, but it's been a fun journey for sure. But and so yeah, so now I'm married. My wife Michelle and I we just have an awesome, awesome, awesome life. And you know, I discovered that I now, as I've been able to slow down a little bit, I have hobbies. I like to play golf. I like to play golf as much as possible. I'd come and play golf right now if you wanted to play. Um, but you know, I'm able to enjoy my life a little bit now, so, and I'm still wrestling with the whole concept that, all of a sudden I'm the old guy now in my area. I'm like the old guy. I'm not, when the heck did that happen? I still think I'm 29, and it's like, what the heck?
You got to keep
But
thinking you're 29 because you'll stay
oh
young.
yeah, I'm young.
Mind's a powerful thing, brother.
Serious denial. Serious denial. These aren't gray hairs. They're just extremely blonde.
Yeah,
That's what it
that's
is.
yeah.
That's
See,
okay.
that's what I say about mine. I keep them short on the side, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. And this on top is very intentional. I keep it light and wispy because there's less air restriction.
Yeah, there you go.
Helps cooling,
Yeah,
cooling.
yeah. Especially for those
Anyways,
hot winters.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
That no, this is I wrote like a whole page of notes because I mean there's so much to take from what you were just saying. One of the main things I wrote too from earlier on that I want to touch on is living out of expectation and not appreciation.
Mm,
That's huge, man. Right there
mm,
is when you realize that, um, because yeah, a lot of us are moving at such a fast pace, and this came to my mind too. Like a lot of us don't stop and just appreciate what we have currently,
that's exactly right.
and
Exactly.
it's we're ahead
Yeah.
of, there's just there's a lot of you look at the house you're living in and you look at the cars you have or whatever, and you're always chasing that next best thing. You're always chasing. I watched actually I saw this last night. I was watching that Aaron Rodgers documentary
Mm,
on Netflix, and he was so hungry for his first Super Bowl. He said that's like why I played football, why I grew up doing it. Like he goes, I wanted it so bad. And he goes, when he finally won in the first year with Green Bay, I think that yeah, they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, he was like, all right, now what? Like, and he
yeah.
felt empty almost because he
Right.
reached that highest peak, but he felt empty. And I think like reflecting on that too, we're all constantly chasing like, all right, I need the bigger house, or I need the better cars, or I need this. But in reality, we need to stop and just appreciate, like you said, be grateful for what God,
Mm,
you list five things every single day of what God gave you too. Look for ways to be a blessing to others. That's one thing you
right.
do every day. Uh, and that's one thing I'm trying to do more of. Be a servant leader.
Mm,
That's why we're put on this earth, right? Is to be servant leaders, not just to our significant others and our kids, but to our employees and our team, to our just to other people too. I mean, I get messages on Instagram, people asking, they listen to the show, they ask for help, and I help them. There's a lot
yeah.
of people that don't take the time to do that or respond to them too.
Right.
So,
Right. Let's roll it back for a second
yeah.
because you prompted something as we're talking about the gratitude. I think that um, whether you believe in God or you believe in the mighty oak or whatever, okay, whatever you believe in, um, with intentionality, taking time, it takes literally, I mean, it doesn't even take a minute to do it. But the process is, and this is a challenge for anyone listening, is that you start your day, right? You get up. I used to do 10, okay, 10 things, but the reality is nobody has any self-discipline anymore. So I'm lucky. I share this with thousands of people. I'm lucky if I get, people to do 5 things a day, right? But you start your day, first thing you do, you pick 5 new things every day in your life to be grateful for. 5 new things. You can be grateful for your family and your friends and your business and opportunity, all the thousands and thousands of things that we're always quickly grateful for. You can be grateful for those as well, but they don't count. And you have a little notepad next to your bed or wherever it is that you find your quiet spot. And you think of 5 new things every day to be grateful for. You jot them down. Could be the cool breeze. It could be and and the power is in the granular items. All
Mhm.
right. Anybody can pick the big thing that you see, but you got to look for the little minute things, which really makes you look with intention.
Mhm.
Right. You jot them down. I wholeheartedly thank God for those things in my life because I deserve nothing, absolutely nothing. And He's created such a world of beauty for me to experience and explore and and acknowledge. And most of the time, as you said, we're going so fast. We have so much obligation in our life that we very rarely notice the things that we're driving by. So what it forces you to do is after the first 10 days are super easy, but after 10 days, what happens is you start to go through your life looking for the things to be grateful for tomorrow.
Mm,
That is where the power is. I started doing this 25 years ago. I have a hill, I own a farm in south of Rochester. And I walked up on my hill one day and I was just broken. We had some problems coming up and some uncertainty and I'm up there and I'm praying and I was taking time to pray, which I never really did that, back then. And I'm like, God, you know what? I need your help. I need your help, you know, which is good, right? And to seek God for help. And I realized, I'm the friend to God that only calls when I have something heavy to lift.
mm,
I only seek him when I have to borrow his truck to move a dresser, right? Or if I find myself in a position where, I've gone so far down the wrong road that I just need help turning the vehicle around so I can drive back out. And I made a declaration that day that I no longer would ask for things for myself. Instead, I would use that time to look for things to be grateful for. And the as a father, that you watch your child and you know what your child needs before they even raise their hand to ask for it, right? And as a father, you just want to be involved. You want to know what they saw. What did he experience today? Especially when they're young and they're exploring new things and new experiences. What did you see today? Well, God's our heavenly Father. He's no different. He just wants to know, hey, what's going on? What's troubling you? How can I help you? Right. And by making that proclamation that day, at that time in my life, I was riddled with anxiety. I've blacked out. I got a scar on my face for hitting my face on a pallet of bricks because lost my temper so bad I blacked out. And you know, it changed. The antidote for anxiety is gratitude. All right. And everything, and all of a sudden I started finding myself having favor or opportunity and blessings, answers to prayers that I never had asked for would just show up, right? Because God honors a grateful heart. The challenge is walking in congruency, as I mentioned, you know, through that journey. But what I so that's the root of how to embark on this gratitude journal. And when you're having a bad day, like which we all do, the storms always come, right? You pull that book out, and when you don't think you can take it anymore, right? You pull that book out and you start reading through all of the thousands of things that you have taken time to acknowledge in your life that are blessings. And you know what? The problems just start washing
mm,
off your back. That rolls off your back. Something really important to be said about gratitude is also that as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as servant leaders, even as servant leaders, we're so focused around our identity and what we do, you know, and that's our driving force. We get up, we go to work every day. We come home. This is what we do. We provide for our families, and then what happens is at some point in our life, we say, all right, I've done all these things. It's time to retire. And there's this steep decline for most men when they retire, when they hit that age where all of a sudden they're no longer, you know, selling real estate or be developing real estate. And now all of a sudden they're like, now who am I? Right. So they've taken a huge part of that identity that's focused around what they do and put it in their heart, and that defines them. Well, now with a heart full of gratitude, that's not the driving factor anymore. So when you get to that day when you're retiring, you can find peace and joy because you're so blessed and you've practiced gratitude throughout this journey. And now that season is gone, and now you can open up yourself to the new chapters ahead, with hope and and focus,
mm.
which is a big thing. a lot of guys, they get done at the end of the day and they come home and they can't turn it off.
Hmm.
Why? Because that's all that they have, right? There's nothing else filling the void in our skin, right? And as silly as it sounds, that practicing that gratitude every day helps me come home and not worry about tomorrow. Helps me come home and be able to focus and try to be present for my family, which is a real problem for most entrepreneurs, is to be present.
Yeah.
And can't say I mastered it by any means. My wife, if she hears it, she's going to go, oh, he's got a long way to go, but
We all
it's
do.
true, right? You know, and that's the humility part,
Yeah.
is being owning it and accepting it, that makes it so powerful. you know I mean, that's what it takes, because most guys are like, they bottle it up, I'm not going to say it. The fear of failure or fear of weakness just drives them into, you know but
Well, I think there's a lot to what you're saying too, as far as like, having a more grateful mindset. God is going to present you with more opportunities and then lead you to, like you said, you started the pool company because there was an opportunity there because you were tired of dealing with all the mishaps of that. And I always try to not struggle. It's hard in business too. If business isn't coming in for some reason. I've told this story a few times on this show. Like last year, we slowed down, and I always, I gotta tell myself too. Election years, most of the time, home
right,
building does, but it was hard on me at first because we were moving, and I'm a sales guy. I'm like, if I'm not selling,
right,
I'm hard on myself because I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And but reflecting on that too, it was a time that it gave me to expand the company and finally open up a place in Naples because we've been in business 30 years but never had an established office in Naples. We've done work up there, but probably missed out on a lot of work not having an actual. It's just different down here where if you have an office on where I'm at on Marco Island versus an office in Naples, you're kind of a Marco builder versus a Naples builder.
right,
And so I was able to do that. And so I started reflecting on that time. And I'm like, I asked for this, I prayed for it. And now I'm like, why aren't I having any work? This and that. And he's probably like, you asked for this. I'm giving you the time to do it. And now you're now you're going against what you're asking for,
right,
So I had to kind of slow down and reflect, but and be grateful for that opportunity, to be able to get up there too. And I know now too, obviously we haven't had work right away. We just opened the office and we haven't had work right away up there. But I know there's little things that he keeps putting me in the room for a reason with certain people that are creating this movement of it's going to expand and it's going to grow and then we're going to take off. And I
right,
think you got to have a lot of patience in business in general because we're all so go, go, go. We all want um, things so fast, but it takes a lot of, whether it's networking, the podcasting, the social media, the presence in front of people, there's a lot that needs to happen for God to be like, all right, you're putting in the work. Here you go. You got to actually
right,
put in the work. But reflecting on what you said too, I love what you said, like take the time to look for things to be grateful for instead of asking for them. You
right.
know, that's huge right there. Like I need to do a better job at that. And I truly believe that God put us in, together on this podcast today for a
There's no
reason.
mistake about
Yeah.
anything like that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I embrace that. So it's to the point where, well, we'll get into it, but it's yeah, I don't question any intentionality in relationships anymore, because you know my network has gotten so big, and the reason for that is because God is aligning me
Hmm.
with people to do something great. And whether it might just be this podcast, that might be it. This might be the apex of me, right? And that's okay. But it's being able to also hear what he wants us to do. And this is a real challenge for myself is that, and I'm sure this will make sense to you, is that imagine, so God to me, and I'm sure there's biblical support to this, but God speaks to me through the tender whispers of his heart.
Mm.
Okay. So when I ask for help or if I need help and I say, God, I need some wisdom on this. Well, in order for me to receive that wisdom, now wisdom may show up, right? Or opportunity may show up. And usually it's never right away, then there's, it sometimes it is, but usually it takes time. Well, I'm a firm believer that, you know, it's if you're asking for something and you're expecting response, you have to put yourself by a perfectly calm, crystal clear lake, right? Imagine I had this experience in Colorado years ago where I sat on the side of this lake. I was fly fishing with my father, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the absolute perfect mirrored reflection of these mountains in the distance in the water. It was absolutely dead still.
Mm.
And that's really where we need to be able to receive what God wants to tell us because he speaks to us in a pebble. If you imagine that perfectly crystal clear lake and he drops a pebble in the middle of it, you'd see that ripple, right? And that ripple gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as it gets closer to the shore, right? And that's where the impact is in your life, right? But if you don't see that ripple, you don't know it's there,
Mm.
right? So most of us live with a lake with 3 or 4 foot waves chop on there, right? Like, greatest catch kind of, you know what I mean? Like, God could drop a tank in the middle of your lake and you'd never know because you got so much noise and activity around you, right? And that's normal, that's life, right? So it takes intentionality. If you ask, you have to be intentional in finding a place to be still and to open yourself up to hear and shut off all the noise and distraction in your life, right? Which is it's so hard. What helps me do it, you know, I'm sure I'm on the spectrum with ADD and all that. What helps me do it is I slow myself down and I look for things to be grateful for. And that's when God speaks to me.
Mm.
And, you think about, connections with people and how, we'll go through life and, you know, like just this last week, I had a high school friend pass away that I haven't seen in years. And oh, it just bothered me, and I thought to myself, gosh, I haven't seen him or talked to him in years. And boy, that's just terrible. I should have done better. And so rolling back a little bit to COVID, when everyone was so disconnected, right? And basically, I have a 45-minute commute to get to my office. And during COVID, I was still going to my office. I'm still driving around, and God put on my heart that you need to be more attentive to the people in your life. All right, and so every day as I'm driving, God will put somebody on my heart. Some random person. Maybe I might have met them. You know, I may have had a long relationship with them. I could have just met them at the grocery store, right? And I'll take a couple minutes and that person is my sixth item on my daily list every day. All right. And I lift that person up and I say a little prayer for them. And I wholeheartedly thank God for them in the fact that our paths crossed, just much like yourself, because it's a touch point in my life. And now look where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what I do is afterwards I call them. I always have their number in my phone. It's kind of weird. I have like, I don't know, like 18,000 numbers in my phone. It's great. I'll call them and it's best or I'll send them a text. It's best if I leave a voicemail and I just say, hey, today I was thinking about you. I know we haven't talked in a few years or whatever it might be. You might not even remember me, but I just want to let you know that, I lifted you up today. I'm proud of you, and, I love you, and, I hope you have a great day. And
Awesome.
Bill, I'm telling you, if every time that I've been able to listen and receive that, it has been that person's answer to prayer, where they're in a tough spot and they just needed some hope and they just need it. And it has been a bright spot in their life. So now I add number 7 on my list, right? And that is, I try to have an intentional conversation with a stranger. This comes from 75 Hard, but
Hmm.
I have an intentional conversation with a stranger for at least 10 minutes every day. And then number 8 on the list now. So now I've kind of, I've expanded it. But and on number 8 on the list is I do a random act of kindness with somebody every day.
Hmm.
It could be something simple to help them with the groceries. It could be buying them the groceries. It could be whatever God prompts me to do. But I try to do that every day. And I try to bring my kids in on it, and so that they understand the gift of giving without the expectation of return.
Mm.
Something that often I mean, everybody hears about the pay it forward thing, but occasionally people will do it. They'll buy somebody coffee or something, which is wonderful. But when you do it with intentionality in your daily journey, it becomes really powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful. But yeah,
Yeah. It's so important what you said right there too. It's amazing what you're doing. I mean, just to meet somebody new every day and just touch them with some kind of just something, can
yeah,
mean a lot to somebody. You just never know what's going on, or reach out to somebody too. Those are like God whispers. I've had
yeah,
that happen where I just get a feeling where I need to text somebody, so I'll write them a nice text, just being like, "Hey, I'm here for you, whatever you're going through, blah blah blah," and they'll text me back and be
right.
like, "Man, I really needed this today."
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
it's amazing.
crazy.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And the thing about it is that, you know, success in business is an addiction, right?
Yeah,
Our drive, it's an addiction. There's nothing that matches the addictive qualities of gratitude and being a blessing to somebody else.
yeah,
Because when you're doing that, you're truly doing God's work, and you're impacting lives in the sometimes the most insignificant way, but it's doing God's work, and there's nothing that is greater than that,
well,
you
I've
know.
even had those whispers, within the business too, with
Oh,
stuff that's
yeah,
happened to clients that, is our fault as a business and they're out of warranty, but I still, talk with them and take
right.
care of it, and not a lot of builders do that. They'll say you're out of warranty and it's on
Yeah.
you. And I've
And
even had the
that,
clients where they're like, "Well, we're going to take care of it." They expect to take care of it. And they don't expect us to, but I'll be like, "No, this is on us. It should never happen." Um, I've done that plenty of times too, and it's not expecting anything in return from them at all. It's
right.
just doing the right thing as a business owner.
And what that is in part the definition of being righteous,
Yeah,
living a life of righteousness, right? And how important that is, right? Because most builders wouldn't do that,
yeah,
but that's the right thing to do. And that's what God calls you to do,
yeah,
as a righteous man, to be humble, to be honest, to be forthright, being willing to have the tough conversations, even when it's not going to benefit you.
yeah,
And which is something I think, I mean, I struggle with that, so at times. I mean, it's easy to, avoid things, and my chink in my armor is the spirit of procrastination, being comfortable and procrastinating on things, and I have to work very diligently to avoid that, because it's a pitfall, and and I think as business owners, there's so much responsibility in our hands. We're leading teams, we're leaders of men and women, and we have these responsibilities with clients. And when you're in that position, and you're a spiritual person, the attack is insane to thwart your efforts.
Mm.
Roadblocks come up and problems and all of these things and oftentimes they're spiritual attacks. And because there's nothing, if you are a spiritual person and you believe in God, well then you have to acknowledge the presence of the devil, and there's nothing that Satan wants. Satan doesn't want us to get together. That's why probably we haven't talked in 2 years,
Yeah.
right? And just distractions, right?
Yeah.
There's, Satan doesn't want me to live a righteous life, right? Because I when you live a righteous light and you exude light and hope in your life, others gravitate to you, right? So I mean, you have to guard your heart. You have to put on the whole armor of God. I do every day. Try to do every day to protect myself because I'm always under attack. I'm always going to have
Hmm.
problems. I'm always going to have conflicts and challenges that sometimes seem insurmountable. But there's not a single day that God hasn't brought me through.
Yeah.
And often I forget that and I'll get focused on, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Tax season. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But you know what? It's okay. And we work through these things. We have to have the tough conversations and do the difficult things to maintain our position of righteousness. And if we do that, there's nothing that God honors more than a righteous man or woman. And um, I don't know what verse that is in the Bible. Probably, I don't know what it is, but I know it's in there. But that's
Yeah.
that's the
Oh,
reality. And um, yeah, so I mean, it's one thing to be an entrepreneur and a provider and all that, but then to do it in a way that you know um, a way of excellence, both spiritually and functionally, it's a challenge. It's tough. It's tough.
yeah.
You know.
Well, I think that's what brings longevity to a construction business is the people that do it the right way. Because I mean, in
Yeah.
your business and in my business, how many times have you seen the cycles of whether it's new builders coming in or new
Right.
landscapers or landscape architects coming in. And then when things do slow down, they disappear because they didn't maintain that longevity of doing it the right way, taking care of clients, building on that too. I mean, we're really trying to do things different more and more and give back to the clients. So this year, like we're having our first client appreciation event.
Oh, that's
And
wonderful.
yeah, and we're gonna have them all at the Hilton and a nice dinner and live music and just get together and appreciate them. And it's a day and they could actually all meet each other too, and how many builders can bring all their clients together,
Right.
happy clients too, and,
Yeah.
bring them all together and talk and meet each other and because we've built so many friendships over the years. And I wanted to, on the procrastination thing, because I think a lot of people do struggle with procrastination. And one thing I said, because I actually spoke on stage at the last Top Contractor School event, is I said success is on the other side of I don't feel like it.
Mm.
And I constantly tell myself that to kind of get through that procrastination is, you know, it's always on the other side if I don't feel like it. And a lot of times we
Right.
don't feel like it. Like I'm doing 75 hard right now. I don't feel like working out twice a day,
Right. Right.
and it's cold for me here in Florida. I'm still doing it. I started a walk this morning and that walk ended up turning into the indoor workout. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was, because it was pouring, started pouring on me, even though my Apple app said it wasn't raining out. So I went out there and it starts dumping on me. But, it's just it's doing those things that are not comfortable, doing those things that most don't do or think that they should do, doing the things that take care of the client like we talked about too. That's what's going to continue to set you apart, grow the business, and it's playing the long term too.
right.
We don't expect anything in return, but over time, you're going to get something in return. I mean, that's how God works in this
Yeah,
life. All those good deeds that you're doing, he's going to be like, here you go, here you go, here you go.
right.
Obviously there may be times where things slow down, and like I talked about too, he's probably doing that for a reason. For me, I think a slowdown also happened is because my superintendents and everybody were pulling their hair out. Everybody was getting too
Right.
stressed out because we had so much work, and it was a good pause to catch up is what happened, and now we're picking up again too. So it's just when you take things into perspective of how he works and how this life is, it's just it's crazy. It's being more intentional like you talked about.
Yeah.
And you being more intentional is talking about your how grateful you are, looking at the small things. I'm gonna start doing a better job at that, is being grateful for the small things instead of always the
Start your
big thing.
list.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Start
gonna
your
start
list.
doing it. Yeah, because that's huge.
What else is fun is that what's really nice is when you're connected. So this is another option too, is I do it with my wife. So I pick lots of stuff. This stuff I don't write down, but um, together as a family, we'll sit down at dinner and we'll just kind of, what I'm grateful for today, and we'll just start naming some stuff as we're talking at dinner, you know, and get my kids involved in it. And some are, some aren't, but constantly trying to find those things. I even do that with clients. I do that with contractors. We'll be meeting, have a contractor kickoff meeting at a job, and we'll have a huddle going, and I'll say, okay, everybody, give me one thing you're grateful for. And that's how we start a meeting, so we set it in the right tone. And, I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful, that it's not raining, and we just acknowledge all that stuff together as a group. And that's how we start. Right. And I think the other thing that, I mean, we're not really even talking, I guess it's all talking about business in a way, but the other factor is, obviously, being grateful, but, we declare that, we believe in Jesus Christ, and we declare that we're being grateful, but do we trust?
Hmm.
How often do we have a complicated problem? As if you're a spiritual person and you have a complicated problem or some situation that you're dealing with, and you're like, oh Lord, I need your help, and you lay it at his feet, right? Say, I need your help with this. I Let me do the heavy lifting, he says, right? So you lay it at here. I need you to take care of this for me. I need your help. And then we step back a little bit more. And then as soon as we say amen, we run over there and we pick it back up again and we start carrying it again. Right? You understand what I mean? We don't release our really often. I struggle with this. We don't release and truly trust. And,
Hmm.
back, this is a crazy story. Back right at the dawn of COVID, um, business obviously was booming, right? And in New York State, um, they shut all work down. I'm sure they did all over the country, but they shut all work down. All non-essential work had to be shut down. And so that winter leading up to that point, I found myself in a situation where, I was in great shape. I pretty much had my entire year booked for the next, I don't remember what year it was, but I pretty much had the entire year booked. I deposits on hand. I mean, materials ordered. I mean, everything is ready to go. And we have winter, okay, not Florida winter. We have winter here, like, feet of snow. We're just outside, we're 45 minutes west of Buffalo, right? So, I mean, we are Bills country here too, by the way. There's no others. This is the Bills country. So, and it's zero out, okay? It's zero, right? So, it's cold, it's snow, and I, after downsizing my company, I had amassed so much stuff. Like, at one point, I don't even know how many pickup trucks we had, and we had, dozens of trucks and trailers and tools, and I went from a 8,000 square foot shop, and I moved everything back to my farm, which is like 5,000 square feet, and it was just packed. So I took this winter and I just said, you know what? Nothing's, COVID's going on. I'm just going to I'm just going to spend the winter organizing the shop and getting it the way I want it so I could work in here, you know. I thought, this might be a little reckless, but I'm sitting looking at the future. I'm like, I've got such a great year ahead. I'm going to spend a little money. I bought some equipment. I redid everything, right? And the whole time I'm thinking, man, I really feel like this is important that I do this, but I feel like I should be remodeling a bathroom or something. I should be maybe putting in a kitchen or something to be earning money. My wife and I, we weren't married at the time. We were just engaged and this maybe this is irresponsible. And God just kept saying, trust, trust, trust. I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy a new milling machine. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to, spending money a little bit, more than I thought I should have. And as we're getting ready to come out of winter and COVID reached a peak and they shut all projects down, and every one of my clients called and postponed or canceled their projects. And I had to return all of their deposits and, that cushy bankroll that I had to return it all. And now I'm looking at, I spent all of this money and that I shouldn't have now because that was my reserve. And now I had to send all their money back and I can't work and I don't have any work to do. Holy smokes, what am I gonna do? I'm like, Lord, what am I gonna do? Trust, trust in me. And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna trust. That was a Friday. On Monday, I get a call from a client and they say, hey, would you be able to make one of these things? And they sent me a picture of a polycarbonate sneeze guard for a desktop, a shield, right? And I'm like, yeah, I can make one of those. Yeah, sure. And I said, I've never, worked with polycarbonate, but I'm sure I can make that. Yeah. So he goes, well, can you do it for this much money? And he told me the price. And I'm like, I better find out how much polycarbonate costs because that seems like a ridiculous amount of money.
Hmm.
And he goes, well, that seems like the rates I see. And I'm like, all right, well, yeah, I can do it for that. He goes, well, good, I'll take 600. And I'm like, uh, no, excuse me. The first was 200, 200. I'm like, oh my gosh, I, you know, I gotta find out if I can get the material. I call one of my good clients and who has a manufacturing company, and I say, hey, I need some polycarbonate. He goes, oh, you making sneeze guards? And I was like, actually, apparently I might be. And he goes, well, I'll call my guy, tell him to give you whatever you need, and just put it on my account, and you can pay me whenever you get paid. So I'm like, oh my gosh. I call the guy back. I said, hey, yeah, I can do it. And then I hung the phone up and it just kept ringing. And people are ordering these sneeze guards. Hey, can you do one for this rate? And it was the same number that I'd been given by the first guy. And I'm like, yeah, that's my going rate. Hadn't built a single one. And we built thousands of these things. And so, and the moral of the story is that everything that I felt inclined to do in my shop was set up completely scratch-free surfaces. Every piece of equipment I bought was exactly what I needed to manufacture these polycarbonate sneeze guards. So we're in there through COVID. We're doing it all by hand, routing all these things out. I made some jigs and templates, right? And I started getting calls from schools. All right. So they wanted like 2,000, 4,000, all the stuff. I'm like, I'm going to have to buy a CNC milling machine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I'm going to wait. I think I'm going to pass on these things. And the day I declined was the day that they opened work up and all my clients came back and booked their jobs again.
Oh.
So, you know, it was nothing that I did, right? But it was my willingness to listen and trust. And now after that experience, and I have so many more in my life, but now I mean, I know when I'm faced with these difficult decisions, that if I'm going to trust, I need to trust and leave it in his hands, and he'll do the heavy lifting, you know.
Amen. Amen, man. Amazing, Kyle. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I want to, obviously, I'd love to, you and I can probably talk for all the rest of the day on just
Yeah.
all of
Well, you had
this.
me back.
Oh, you're coming
Yeah.
back on, definitely. I do want to wrap up with you with the question I ask everybody, more on a personal basis, even though we have gotten more on a personal basis here. But what about you personally? You're building an amazing company, a brand that continues to grow each and every day. What lessons have you learned throughout your journey that we should all apply to our own business and our lives that can help us grow?
Okay. Well, walk with humility, walking with humility, knowing that, it's okay not to have all the answers. Surround yourself with people that are good at the things that you're not good at,
Mm,
right? Build a team that's diverse, that complement you is very important. And though we feel that we can master all things, right, with hard work and dedication, and we can, but we're just really not designed to do those things. And allowing yourself that freedom to hire somebody in that position is key to success. And but personally, for me, is you know, as we talked about, is maintain congruency, and it's not easy. It's not easy, and you know, uh, maintaining integrity and having those difficult conversations and not shying away from it, right? Having those difficult conversations and being willing to put yourself in a vulnerable state because it's the right thing to do, much like you do with your clients and warranty issues. Those are the marks of true leadership, and to be a good father, and to be present for your kids is so important. To be present for your wife, date night every week. I mean, I've made so many mistakes, as a young man, young married father, young father, um, that, you know, you can't, sometimes marriages don't recover from some of these things,
mm,
and I'm not talking about critical things. I'm just talking about communication and recognizing that as important as work is, I mean, we all have bills to pay and we have obligations, and sometimes you just have to work the long hours, but to be able to come home and be present for your family, there's no greater gift that you can give your family. And those are the things that I try to portray in my life, and try to lead with that. And business comes and goes, and uh, I personally, I know that a lot of my identity is tied up in what I've built and who I am as a designer, and I'm addicted to the wins, right? But that's really not what defines me, you know, and so protecting your mind and your heart, against the fiery darts of the enemy at all times, because it can be a tough battle. I think I kind of got sidetracked there, but that's really the crux of my existence is, trying to stay humble, and and being honest, and accepting, taking responsibility is a
yeah.
big thing. I mean, ownership, owning it. I mean, those some of the books, Extreme Ownership, and all those books. I mean, um, or Extreme Accountability. I mean, such good books, and oftentimes, especially as a parent, leading your household and teaching your children to have ownership today and taking accountability is like kids today, they miss that mark.
Mm,
They always are blaming, oh, this and that, whatever. And at the end of the day, it's comes down to you, right? But I really appreciate being on the show today. I really look forward to
yeah.
being able to talk more a little bit. Maybe next time we'll talk about, some business and some
No,
fun things there. And
yeah, I mean, this all covers business because I don't even have to ask you what to look for when looking for somebody with what you do because you've already said it on the show. That's why I didn't even ask that question. Because if somebody can't listen to this and say, "Man, I need to hire Kyle," like
Yeah,
there's something wrong, or they're just
yeah,
looking for a cheap price or something. But
yeah,
which we're not going to get into all that. But it's
yeah. That's the next. We'll talk numbers the next episode.
that's the next one. Yeah, for sure, brother. It's no, like I said, I think I am a big believer in God puts you in a room with somebody for a reason. You reached out to
Yeah,
me and you and I haven't talked in a couple of years, and I'm
yeah,
glad you reached out to me, man. We were able to reconnect and do this because um these shows always help me too. It's not just the listener, they help
right,
me. That's why I really love doing this is how can I help you? How can you help me? We connect with through it, and it's awesome because somebody's going to get something out of this.
right.
Multiple people will, I'm sure, because this was such an impactful, powerful episode, and um, this one needs to be listened to more than once for sure. And you're definitely
Hmm.
coming on again too. So,
Yeah,
um,
I'd love it. I'd
yeah,
love it.
where can
And
people
then
find and
once
connect with you too?
Facebook, Kyle D. Stevens on Facebook. My Instagram presence, I'll be honest with you, is weak. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to Lux info at Lux Pool and Spa to email me, or Kyle at Stonewood Waters and is spelled out to email me. And then anytime I welcome a call if you want to post a number in the bio or the link at the bottom, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm always open to listen, and that's something that I know we're closing up, but that you mentioned is that what I've learned in my life is that there's nothing more valuable um, than the than listening.
Yeah.
You know, listen more and speak less. Listen more, speak less. And if you're in sales or if you're a builder, it doesn't matter what it is that you do. At the end of the day, people want to be heard, right? We all want to be heard. And as contractors, we're so focused on trying to sell, right, that oftentimes we never really listen.
Hmm.
And so I try to make that a constant in my life, that I'm always working at it, because I can talk like the rest of us. I can run on and on and on. So, but listen more, talk less.
I 100% agree with you because listening more than anything creates what you talked about earlier,
Yeah,
trust. So,
right.
and when you get somebody's trust, I mean, it's
Yeah,
game over. That's it. That's what that's why we're in business is,
right,
I look at myself to close this up. I look at myself and I only want to work with people I trust. I like and trust, right?
right,
So that's what listening does is when people listen to me, listen to what I want, especially when with my own home, and then they take care of it and they're just great contractors. You're sold. It's a lifetime relationship. So,
right.
that's been great, man. Like I said, I really appreciate you. I'm glad we got together. Obviously, you and I are going to continue to talk more. Not
Good.
let's not go 2 years. So
No,
let's do this more frequently, obviously. And no, man, I appreciate it. So with that being said, everybody listening, please take the time to share. This goes a long way. Share with your friends and family. This one needs to be shared. Listen to it a couple times because very impactful. Appreciate you guys. 5-star reviews on iTunes go a long way. So appreciate that. And we will see you guys on the next episode.